All right, so Tom Cotton appeared on CNBC's Squawk Box yesterday, and had a word of warning for Wall Street. Let's play a little bit of that clip here.
What Larry Fink and BlackRock have done, in part through collusion with this climate action partnership, is essentially create a climate cartel. They are trying to suppress investment in the fossil fuel industry in America. And I know you have a lot of CEOs and investors who watch. I would just say this. If you're thinking about joining this climate cartel, you better think again and you better lawyer up. There's a reason why America's top law firms are already advising their clients to be wary here, because this is contributing to $5 a gallon gas. And when Republicans take charge in November, I'm going to make sure that the Congress is investigating these matters. This is almost certainly a breach of these firms' fiduciary duties, probably a civil violation of the antitrust laws, exposing them to triple damages, and very possibly a criminal violation. When we win back the White House in 2024 and the Department of Justice and the Federal Trade Commission is no longer an ideological and partisan weapon against the oil and gas industry, some of these executives could be facing time in federal prison. So I would just encourage everyone to think carefully.
All right, we are joined now by Sam Geduldig, a corporate lobbyist with the CGCN group, who wrote a memo earlier this week that doesn't touch directly on this particular theme, but generally about what it's going to look like for Wall Street, for corporate America, if House Republicans or when House Republicans, take over the lower chamber come next January. So he writes, the dynamic is real and it will be felt in legislation passed and oversight hearings held, some of it directly targeting companies who are viewed as instigators and bullies in the culture wars. This posture will undoubtedly change how CEOs and trade associations interact with the new Republican majority and vice versa. Administration officials, such as SEC Chair Gary Gensler, will also feel burdened by Republican oversight with near continuous requests to testify in front of lawmakers in an attempt to wear them down and slow down Biden's regulatory efforts. And so, Sam, I think the latter part of that, trying to gum up the ability of regulators to regulate Wall Street, I think that's what we would expect from a Republican majority taking over. The other part we might not expect. What do you mean that House Republicans are ready to be players in this culture war and to involve corporate America in it?
So we talked to a lot of Republicans on the Hill and the Senate staff, and the old conventional wisdom is, that the Republican Party is the party of the wealthy, country club Republicans, supporters of the business community with no regard to some of the more liberal leaning kind of policies that they might be pursuing. I just feel like that whole narrative that Republicans are in lockstep with the business community and they're representing these wealthier constituencies is outdated. And it started becoming outdated even pre-Donald Trump's election in 2016. And the transformation, I think, will be complete with this next election in the midterms. The coalition that they believe will bring them a majority in the House are pro-life voters, Second Amendment voters, small businesses, not large business, and certainly not corporate executives in Chicago, New York, California, and other major cities. Parents that are concerned about the education system that their kids are being pushed through. Immigration hardliners, people that want to secure the border, law enforcement, law and order type Republicans. And the newest part of that coalition is Hispanic voters, working class voters and working class constituencies are something that they view as their growing constituency. They view that the other side of this group of individuals are Hollywood, the news media minus Fox and the Wall Street Journal, increasingly corporate America, and the education system, whether it's, the kids going through the lower education or elites in the colleges. And, I think the way the media has portrayed Republicans is not accurate as to who they are. They're trying to appeal to a different kind of voter. They're trying to steal Democratic constituencies. And if you believe the polling and, Myra Flores's special election a couple of months ago kind of proves the point. It's the second most Hispanic district in the country. She won with a pretty healthy margin. I think she's expected to win re-election when she runs again in November. it doesn't jive with the old conventional wisdom of the Republican Party being something that it just simply isn't anymore. And I think that's why people get, how to cover this Republican Party confused. This reflexive idea that they're just going to run and do corporate tax cuts for corporate America and reward, a constituency that they view has left them behind. They're not big contributors anymore. If you look at corporate contributions to the Republican Party, I'm sure it's dropped off a cliff. And Republicans have made up the difference through, various fundraising ways, but corporate America is not part of it. So I think their agenda next Congress will reward the people in the coalition that they think will bring them the majority.
Well, yeah, and that's the big question. Whether this ends up actually translating into policy is very different than whether it's used sort of as a political wedge issue or as a sort of a football to appeal more to working class voters. Then does it get turned into policy? But even the posture is policy in and of itself. And I'm curious for your take on this, Sam, because it's very interesting to see how corporate America has responded to some of this backlash, which is not just to the point of your memo, isolated to base voting Republicans. There are a lot of independents who are just absolutely disgusted by the sort of corrupt social justice pandering that comes out of some of these corporations. We had a great segment with Ryan's colleague Lee Fong last week about how these corporations appropriate ESG to absolutely ludicrous ends. And Sam, I'm curious what your sense is about whether this is actually is this having any chilling effect on corporate America's sort of open embrace of ESG? Have the people you talked to on Capitol Hill noticed that from the business community? Have you noticed that from the business community, that some people are realizing this is starting to look really bad for us? This is going to hurt our market performance because our audience isn't interested in seeing this from us. It's not the cash cow that we thought it was. Have you noticed any of that?
Yes, 100%. ESG kind of has, encapsulated this whole rift between corporate America and Republicans. If you look at the agenda that Republicans are going to pursue, they've had these task forces working all spring and summer, and I think they're going to roll out an agenda that kind of advances a lot of policies that they believe their constituencies that I mentioned before would benefit from. There's no working group. There's no discussion about doing anything to help corporate America in any document I've ever seen. So I don't know that they're going to be punished. It doesn't say that, and I've not heard that, but they're certainly not a priority for a Republican majority. They're going to focus on, keeping the borders safe, law and order, parental control in schools, trying to, do something about inflation, gas prices. I think if there is a sector that Republicans feel is aligned with them, it's the energy sector, and it's because of this ESG issue. ESG is everything to Republicans. You can find a pro-choice Republican. You can find a pro-gun control Republican in the House. You can't find a pro-ESG Republican. There is no such thing. Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger don't even support it, is my guess. I haven't talked with them, but it's unanimous. Not one Republican will support those policies that they think have, run amok and caused inflation, caused unrest. If they look overseas to Sri Lanka and these other countries that have, great ESG ratings, but the presidential palaces are overthrown, and they think ESG is the cause of everything bad that's happening right now in America.
So what do you say to Democrats who say, look, we saw all of this rhetoric from Trump in 2016. He comes into office, he's going to beat up all the big bad corporations, and the way he beats them up is with like a $6 trillion tax cut. Was that the kind of last gasp of the Ryan wing of the party, and that it's transforming into something different, or is this just rhetoric that is being used to kind of appeal to working class voters, but when they actually get in power, it's going to be the same kind of Reagan descendants that we've known before?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think that Ryan kind of corporate tax cut is, a thing of the past. A lot of Republicans view that vote as something they did that they missed an opportunity to reward constituencies that would actually support them in the future. They gave these corporate American, businesses this tremendous tax cut, and then, a year later, they've been on the receiving end unfairly, in their opinion, of, woke policies, PAC bans, and all sorts of kind of decisions to move away from Republicans. So I think Republicans view kind of, we did this for you, and you've become a fair weather friend, and shame on us for we're not going to make that mistake again. So I feel like that's where things are headed, that the Republicans today would rather spend the energy whipping a bill that gave a tax cut to small businesses and entrepreneurs that are maybe struggling in COVID, and maybe less incentivized to help some of these Fortune 500 companies that they feel have, picked a fight with them in their minds. They do feel bullied. I know that sounds strange, but they feel like that group of Hollywood, corporate executives, the news media, the education system, they have all the power, and they're ramming this agenda down the throats of people that are kind of powerless to stop them. And they're like out of their mind, kind of frustrated. And I think a Republican majority is a first step to reining it in. And I think there's going to be a ton of oversight in those areas.
Yep, hollowing out the country socially, culturally, and economically.
Yeah, and this mid-sized business victimization thing has been actually the backbone of the Republican Party since Goldwater. That's who backed the Goldwater people. Like if My Pillow was a company in the 50s, that guy would have been a Goldwater guy.
True.
Yet somehow corporate America still dominated in the Reagan era, so I wouldn't count him out just yet.
If you look at legislation that's come from Marco Rubio, proposals from Marco Rubio, Jim Banks, Josh Hawley, this is serious anti-corporate legislative maneuvering. So there's still, this tug of war is still playing out, but I think there's a glimmer of hope that the litmus test is, if you get power again and you do corporate tax cuts, get out of the 2022 Republican Party. But that remains to be seen. Sam Geduldig, thank you so much as always.
Great to see you guys. Thanks.
We'll be back with more Rising after this.